Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today in the latest Boutique Hotel News webinar, co-hosted in partnership with Canary Technologies. And today we're talking about how to turn your tech stack into a revenue generator. My name's Eloise Hanson. I'm the editor of Boutique Hotel News, and we are an online trade publication. We cover the global boutique lifestyle luxury hotel industry, including branded residences. As I mentioned at the top end of my intro, today's webinar is being co-hosted in partnership with Canary Technologies, a guest management platform. And as all of you get settled in, ready for today's conversation, we'd just like to play another short video for you. And further details have been popped into the chat if you would like to learn more about Canary Technologies, and we will be hearing from Alex shortly. So just a quick overview of how today's webinar is going to run. We'll spend around 45 minutes talking to our speakers today, followed by some time at the end to take any questions from the audience. So if you do have any pressing queries or urgent questions, please do get in touch. You can submit your questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens, and I will keep my eye on that ready for the end of the webinar. And just a reminder that today's webinar is being recorded. Everyone that has registered will get a copy of that recording within 2 days' time. And if you're able to stick around just at the end when this webinar closes, we have a really short survey. We're always looking to improve what we do, so any feedback would be truly valuable. So before we get stuck in, I always like to provide some context as to why we're here, what's actually happening in the market. And a global study from Hotel Tech Report, which was actually published earlier this month, analysed how 450 operators evaluate their property management systems. Now you're thinking PMS systems, we're here to talk about tech stacks and revenue, but some key takeaways in this report are super relevant for today's conversation. So firstly, as hotel tech stacks expand, hoteliers now expect more integrations and connectivity. 44% said that customer relationship management platforms and guest marketing integrations are critical to daily operations, and 39% point to guest messaging tools as key links within their tech stack. Secondly, when looking to the future, 49% of operators want AI-powered automation and personalization to be prioritized next. And 45% of operators call for faster integrations and open marketplaces. The other headline on your screen here, this is a recent report by Canary Technologies, which is exploring the use of AI in hospitality. And a really interesting stat, which ties in to the other report, is that 77% of hospitality professionals planned to set aside 5 to 50% of their IT budget for investment into AI tools this year. And if we go on to the next slide, we can see some of the motivating reasons for this investment. Right at the top here is increased efficiency, which is about 62%, but really not too far behind at 58%. The priority is to improve the guest experience. And to round off the top 3 priorities for tech investment, 50% would invest in AI to increase revenue. So again, super relevant to why we're here today. The link to download that report from Canary Technologies is in the chat. I would encourage you to do so because it does explore how AI is creating new revenue generation pathways. So it talks about reputation management, loyalty, personalization, automated offers. It's all there, all of which we're actually going to be talking about today. So don't go anywhere. Let's meet our speakers. I will move from left to right as per the PowerPoint slides. And a rather lovely segue from the Canary Tech report is Alex Reid himself. So Alex, over to you.
Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm Alex Reid. I am the sales director for the UK and Ireland at Canary Technologies. I've been doing this role for around a year now. Really, breaking into the hotels in the industry and seeing what's relevant with the landscape right now, and how Canary can match that and offer some good solutions for what's changing in today's day.
Thanks, Alex. Kristina, over to you. Welcome.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Kristina. I'm the Director of Revenue here at the Crowne Plaza in Newcastle. I have been part of this hotel specifically for around 4 years and have been working with Canary for over a year and other technologies previously as well. So quite well versed and quite familiar with the range of technologies that are there for us to use and happy to discuss this today.
Thank you, Kristina. And Jurriaan, thank you. Short welcome, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jurriaan de Vos. I'm the Commercial Director for Montcalm Collection, which is a London-based hotel group. We operate a variety of properties in London primarily. Have been in the industry for donkey years, so started off when Booking.com still had to find its feet to where we are now, where it's causing a huge disruption. So yeah.
Pleasure to have you, Jurriaan. And just to flag, all the LinkedIn profiles of our speakers are in the chat. We've got lots to get through today. We might not quite get through it all, but we'll do our very best. So yeah, LinkedIn profiles are there. We're here to carry on that conversation, even after today's webinar has ended. So how to turn your tech stack into a revenue generator. Now, just a moment ago in my context slides, I highlighted that 39% of operators want guest messaging tools or see guest messaging tools as key links within their tech stack. So Kristina, I'd like to kick off with yourself before coming to Jurriaan, please. What engagement strategies, could be messaging, could be offers, have you seen to be the most effective in conversions for direct bookings?
Absolutely. I think for branded hotels like ours, I think the starting point is always the brand tools that are there for us, especially the loyalty programs such as IHG One Rewards program, which is a great conversion tool, really, and it offers a huge variety of benefits for our guests, like from late checkouts to welcome amenities, complimentary upgrades, etc. And of course, member rates. In particular, that's sort of like useful during the campaigns, brand campaigns, where the members get additional discounts. Now, however, we go one step further, and how do we, how do we amplify brand campaigns? As we use the marketing, we use social media, and we use technologies that we have available. With the likes of Canary messaging, we are able to target specific segments and specific guests that are coming to stay with us, because we're able to personalize the messages. For example, we are able to offer the particular promotion for IHG guests, like the Green Engage, that is offered via the brand, and they're able to then send that message to all our guests that are coming, that are IHG guests, via the Canary messaging, and push that message out to them, and then really promote these tools. So I think holistic approach is really needed. You can't just rely on brands. It's more how do you then connect to the individual guest, because brand is very sort of like overall campaign, and what that technology like Canary enables us to then speak to the individual guest and contact them with a very personalized service.
Can you it's always good to know the split in terms of guest segments at hotels. What's the corporate v leisure sort of split there? Are you able to give us an idea?
Yes, it's very much by day of week. I would say we're a very corporate hotel when it comes to Monday through to Friday. We've got a very big meetings and events space as well. So lots of conferences, lots of corporates, and then very leisure-based hotel on the weekends. And that's why for us it's so important to personalize these offerings and to target specific segments, because they may be very different Monday through to Friday, and then again on a weekend. So that personalization and that level of detailed and staying relevant with your offers, staying relevant really, and staying important, and for the guests that's very, very important for us to be able to speak to everyone, but not having the one approach for all.
Mm-hmm. And Jurriaan, what engagement strategies have you found have worked particularly well with your guests at Montcalm?
Naturally, Kristina already covered a lot, and we're operating various Marriott properties as well. So when we talk about loyalty, Bonvoy is probably the largest scheme in the world by far, and they have a big track record when it comes to engagement. I think on the other side, we also operate independent hotels in London, or smaller brands in London. Personalized pre-stay emails, and even during their stay, offering direct booking opportunities, but also other perks, of course, help. Urgency messaging. Is there limited availability, time-bound offers? Those tend to work quite well in specific periods. Loyalty enrollment, of course, is a big one. And I think another one is the real-world impact. Direct offers outperform generic discounts when tied into an experience, and that's very important. I think when we think about direct bookings, the strategies that work best are those that connect both the head and the heart, as we say. Tangible benefits naturally matter. Late checkouts, curated experience, breakfast, those kind of things. But what truly converts is when these benefits are wrapped up in storytelling. And that is essential for us. Guests don't just want to have a discount. I mean, we've come a long way from that. They want recognition, and they want purpose. And when messaging explains why booking direct matters, supporting local makers, community projects, or sustainability initiatives, it stops being a transaction and becomes a part of something much bigger. And that's when direct bookings really climb for us.
Some great points raised there, Jurriaan. And I want to bring Alex into the conversation here, because in order to highlight a purposeful booking, or to truly personalize an offer or a messaging, you need data, right? And you need that data on said guests. So, Alex, what can hoteliers do to learn more from their existing systems, take that data, and then use that to drive personalized offers and effectively more sales?
I think, it's good to note there that it's something that Kristina and Jurriaan are doing really well already. And it's always the first point of this conversation for me, is that it's understanding that that data is actually there for you to use. A lot of these hotels, or most hotels, already have really valuable guest data. It really is just underused. You've got all of this information in your PMS, your booking engine, and through day-to-day guest interactions. Things like when a guest booked, or if they've stayed before, or what extras they usually go for. Something that, Canary does really well is help you act on that data without needing a full CRM, essentially. You can take what you already know and use tools like AI messaging to send, relevant, timely communication. It could be something as simple as a pre-arrival message welcoming a guest that's already stayed with you before, or a friendly note highlighting the benefits of booking direct next time. The real big win here is that personalization feels natural. It's not forced. So guests are far more likely to engage when communication really feels tailored. So understanding that the last time they were with us, they had the English breakfast as opposed to the Irish breakfast. And hotels using that information and using Canary's messaging tools or they can also automate around 18 to 90% of that within the guest conversation. So it's not about adding another system. It's about using the data you have and automating that and just allowing you to connect really, really well with your guests.
Mm-hmm. And Alex, we have quite a few independent hotels that are tuning in or have signed up to this webinar. What are some of those low cost tactics that smaller independent properties can use to book to boost their direct bookings without all the big heavy investment in, like you just said, it's all there, it's within our tech stacks already. How can we access?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I often find when I'm speaking to the smaller independents that they look at something like this, especially when there's a lot of brand backing with it, and they think, well, that's just too big for me. And I always say, start small, but start smart. You don't need a huge budget to increase direct bookings. A few well-planned changes and changing some things that you already have. Make sure that your direct booking perks are always clear everywhere on your website, confirmation emails, even your social channels. Simple things like free breakfast, a welcome drink or late checkout make a huge difference when guests are deciding, where to book. And then, look at your website. Research shows that around 70% of travelers actually visit a hotel's website before booking, often just to check for a better rate or more information. If it's complicated and you have 25 different pages and it's hard to find answers, you quite often see people dropping off, potential guests dropping off. Now, at this point, they either head back to the OTA or worse, somewhere else altogether. And that's where something small like AI web chat can make a massive difference. It's a really, really low cost bit of tech that you can add to your tech stack, really simple to set up. Now, what it does is it answers guest questions in real time. So if, they are on the website, generally they're heading for the point of information they want first, they're more than likely to use a web chat bot. And again, it's not about adding the work for the smaller properties. Quite often the smaller properties have less time than the bigger properties. So it's about that automation in there. And, the best part, it doesn't just respond to FAQs. It acts like a virtual sales assistant. It can quote rates, explain perks, and even collect details for follow-ups. So for smaller hotels, it's an affordable, low effort way to turn your website from a digital brochure into an actual booking channel.
I think if I what Alex is saying is very true. And just to go back on what you were previously talking about, the level, we need to get to a point where communication becomes intuitive for a guest, right? That's what we try to aim for. Not necessarily do larger hotel chains or hotel groups have more budget than independent hotels. That's a misunderstanding. At the end of the day, we look at our P&Ls and we want to optimize our P&Ls in the best way possible. And data is super, super powerful, but only when it becomes invisible. If guests don't want to feel like they are data points, right? That's the last thing we want. They want to feel like humans being recognized, and the more intuitive that data capture is, and we can translate that into guest messaging, as what Alex just said with an AI web chat, that really is a powerful tool to make messaging more intuitive and more guest centric. When we integrate PMS, CRM, and review insights, we can anticipate 3 preferences, if you like. A wellness journey for one guest, a curated dining itinerary for another. But there's a key here. We don't use data to bombard guests. We use it to empower choice, and I think that is critical. The luxury is sensitive. It knows when to speak, and when silence is more powerful. And I think that basically also by using tools like Alex mentioned, that is, if you use it correctly, 1, it doesn't break the bank. 2, it's very subtle, and I think we've gone away from, and I remember that Alex and I were talking about this during a previous conversation. But if you look at major brands, big brands, they used to shout about points and enhancements and why you should be a member and for what reason and what all the point perks were. I think it has become a lot more subtle now than what it used to be.
I also think that travelers are far more discerning. And when you talk about the storytelling aspects, Jurriaan, and marrying your heart with your head, I think that definitely struck a chord. I mean, boutique lifestyle luxury hotels is what Boutique Hotel News is about. And I loved your message about empowering choice.
Yeah.
And I think that this brings me on quite nicely to Kristina, because one of the ways that we can drive more revenue is through very timely, very relevant upsell opportunities in order to empower our guests to book and to take action. So Kristina, like where do you see the biggest opportunities in today's market to provide those upsell offers?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of we use various tools throughout the guest journey, right? We have multiple touch points with a guest via messaging app as soon as the guest has made that booking. And it's just, yes, we've got your booking. We are aware that you're coming. We are here to help you. So that gives us that initial touch point that we are there if in case a guest does need to contact about anything really. Like we are there. We are there as a property, and they're able to contact us. And I think that is very important, because a lot of times when you travel, you have different questions maybe popping up in your head based on when are you looking to travel, how well in advance you are. Maybe as soon as you book, you're exploring the area, you want to sort of link up to the property and just get some good ideas of what's happening in the area. And we've got obviously the digital information for the guest, what's happening in the area as well, so we're able to connect to the guest at the very different times periods for the guest in their journey. We are able to sort of like communicate different messages for them and be able to connect in a different way. Obviously, we are able to also promote and inform of our services, which a lot of times are sort of like extended. You know, when you book, you're not wanting to go maybe and scroll through a page and see what's happening and what's available at the hotel. So at a very quick question, we are able to provide all the information that is relevant to that guest, that necessarily you might not want to be scrolling through the website looking for that information. So that information is a lot more tailored and much more relevant to that specific guest on their journey. And then obviously, once we have the guests in front of us, the most important for us is probably the check-in process, you know, so that connection with the guests, where we are really able to understand their needs, to understand what they are celebrating, and able to tailor those. So the technologies that are fully integrated with our PMS, that give us the live data based on our availability, our offerings. We make it very easy for our agents to sort of like have a tailored offers for the guests. So everything's already tailored, and it makes it very streamlined, very efficient way of upselling based on the guest needs, based on what the guest booked, based on their requirements, really. And what really helps is then having the leaderboards for our team to see how everyone's engaging with that technology. So I think a little bit of a competition always helps in a team, and then obviously incentives built into that, and becomes really about the recognition for the team as well, which at the end of the day, it's important to recognize and empower the team to use and engage with tools. So that's sort of really for us, I would say, the most important in terms of revenue generating per se. Everything else creates a context, yes, absolutely, and we're able to provide the services. But I think that's in-person communication at the arrival still remains for us the biggest revenue opportunity, really. And then, of course, throughout this day, we use the in-house collateral, TV screens. You know, the app is there if they need to contact us for any little things, and that's really adding the value for them and improving the guest experience. You know, for us, the journey started about improving the guest experience. It was not really generating additional revenue, but the story was, we want to improve that guest experience, and how do we do that without guests having to pick up that phone and call us and try, email us, and this is such a quick way of being in touch with the team, for team being aware of what the guests' needs are, and it doesn't stop 9 to 5. You know, it's available all around the clock. And that ease of use, I think that's what makes a difference, really.
Just to jump on what Kristina says, because I mean, what she says is very true, of course. But I think we've also come to a bit of a turning point when it comes to upselling. If the aim is, and it shouldn't be the aim, is to squeeze more money out of guests, right? But it's a very short-term solution, or a short-term gain. I think what it's about, and Kristina very nicely pointed in that direction already, is to enhance or enrich that journey, because that has a far longer effect. If a guest feels that it's part of, or an enrichment of their journey, whatever their journey is, then automatically that has a much longer effect, because they will want to come back. So upselling is no longer, or can no longer be seen as an individual item that is being added on. It needs to be much more meaningful than that. And I think when we look at technology, this is where data can really help and really support it. But then the data is in the background and kind of supplies us with information that we can use, understanding guest needs and guest requirements on almost an individual level, where we can, rather than calling it upselling, is more, enhancing the journey. But I think where upselling really starts is the moment someone makes a reservation. that's the ultimate point, because if that decision can be taken then, the next step is, okay, how do we further enhance that guest journey, which naturally also brings in more money, but not necessarily for a front of house team member that is welcoming a guest. There's a fine balance between pushing a sales and enriching an experience.
If I could chime in there as well, is that what's really lovely to see is that, you know, we often talk about upselling and guest experience as well, is that you have two people there that are so involved in hospitality and have been for a long time, is that hospitality is still coming first for them over the revenue, but the revenue is still a big driver behind that. You know, you often see that with guests that just don't have access to options. It's not about pushing things on them. If you think about your own way that you travel, you go to a hotel, you'll never sit there and you'll say to the hotel, you know, oh God, you know, you don't have your options available. I often do sit there and think, I wish there was an easier way to order from the hotel, but there's already something in place that takes away from it. So they can just go on their phone and they can order a Deliveroo. And that's why a lot of hotels see 50 scooters turning up every night with lots of different options for them. Is not because the food's any worse or the service has been bad. It's because, you know, the ease of use aspect to it. So it's really about combining that hospitality with the incentive as well of revenue from it, which is really great for that point.
Just to jump on what Alex said, yeah, it just came, it popped up in my head. I recently had, and this is a funny story. I recently had a conversation with a chauffeur service for one of our hotels, and we were talking about how we engage with guests, etc., etc. And I mentioned to him, I said, look, if your driver, your very kind driver, collects our guests from Heathrow Airport and drives them to whatever, Mayfair, then that person is spending 45 minutes, if not longer, with our guest. That driver has a bigger opportunity to speak to our guests than I have throughout a 5 or a 6 night stay of a guest. So how can we utilize that data, that information that is gathered by the driver before the guest actually arrives? And it started a whole conversation about how do we transition that information basically from a chauffeur service to a hotel concierge. The guest steps out of the car and is welcomed by a concierge. If that concierge already knows what the guest has been talking about in the car, that will be amazing. I mean, that's a welcome experience that you can't pay for that. So what kind of technology will we use? And I'm looking at Alex because he has the answer. What kind of technology will we use to kind of, you know, get that data within that time frame?
Alex, do you see that as being a potential reality? I mean, I know we are really like possibly thinking blue sky right now and looking into the future, but Jurriaan raises a really cracking point. You look at how the OTAs are trying to tap into, it's not just booking your hotel, it's your airplane, it's your taxi service. I mean, we can, as hoteliers, start controlling more of that guest journey and therefore optimizing more data points that we can effectively leverage in the future. How do you see technology evolving to tap into that?
Well, I think technology is already, you know, at a point where it can cover a lot of that. Essentially, what we're seeing here is the missed opportunity as opposed to actually creating opportunity. It's things that are already happening in front of our eyes. You know, I think automation and technology can really fill that gap in terms of picking off these key points before the guests have even arrived at the property. You know, automation has completely transformed that in hotels. You know, traditionally, you know, the upselling, like Kristina's team does, happens at the point of check-in. You know, and if it's a busy summer's day and you have a queue going out the door, you know, it's a very limited opportunity for a hotel to do any, you know, upselling at all. When I look at it, I always break it down into 4 key points. You know, you've got pre-arrival, upon booking, arrival, during the stay, and one that's often missed is the night before a guest actually leaves the hotel. And it's about, you know, combining all of those. So the knowledge that you can take from the chauffeurs, the automation of maybe the chauffeur saying, you know, well, this property actually has a digital link that goes out throughout your entire stay, which means that you have access to these upselling opportunities, and combining all of them together. You know, when you're standing at a busy check-in desk and you're offered an upgrade or an extra, there's hardly any time for a guest to process it. You know, most of the time the response is, I'll think about it. And you know, even after a guest has checked in later and decides they'd like an upgrade, by then it feels like it's too much hassle to move rooms. And often the only way to take advantage of the other options is to go back down to the front desk, which can be, you know, inconvenient and discouraging. So, you know, I think the opportunities already exist. You have dynamic upselling tools like Canaries that can, you know, engage with guests at every point of the journey, but really customizing that with each individual hotel has been super, super important in getting the message across at the right time for them.
Alex, can you share some like good examples of successful upselling initiatives that you've seen within it could be clients of yours, perhaps a hotel that you've just popped in and you know, appreciated and you know, saw the offer and thought, hey, these guys are doing it well. What are you seeing from that sort of broader market perspective, hotels that are doing this well?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, some of the hesitance around upselling, and quite often when I speak to the smaller independents, they say that, you know, we don't have much to upsell. And I say it's not always about having a long, long list of opportunities for guests to book and buy things. You know, quite often two of the best performers that I see are early check-in and late checkout. You know, earlier in knowing that you've got some international guests arriving from America at 7 o'clock in the morning and having an automated message that sends them saying, you know, how about an early check-in option? You know, we see a lot of hotels, especially in London, really making and maximizing a lot of revenue from that. But the other layer to that is that you have the guest experience that shoots up through the roof. Oh my God, I've just arrived. I can check in early. It's 20 to 30 pounds. It's nothing. And it's quite often something that's missed at the point of booking. If you think about when someone's actually booking their holiday from the start, wherever they're booking that from, they're looking at a lump sum. So £250 for a night is what they're willing to spend. But when it says 280 for the room above, they'll stick with the 250. Whereas when they see the room above upgrade come through for an additional £30, maybe a week before they arrive, a pre-arrival message, it's very easy and very convenient to think, it's only £30 instead of the whole 280. So there's a lot of psychology behind it. You know, early check-ins, late checkouts, dining packages perform really strongly. You know, a lot of F&B up and down the country is really about getting that message to the guest before they arrive. Now, during the stay, you know, guests always want information. If you're in somewhere, you know, like London, like Jurriaan is, or Newcastle, like Kristina is, you know, what are guests going to ask? You know, what are the local attractions? What can I do today? You can have a system like Canary AI messaging that understands that, detects that sentiment, and can say, you have these 5 options locally to you. Would you like to book using our chauffeur service? Would you like to use, you know, a different option that we have for you? And really a way to elevate the guest experience at the same time as generating that revenue. So you're thinking about the revenue, but you're really filling those gaps for the guest as well.
Yeah. And so, but to Alex's point, one thing about early check-in and late checkout, you have to also balance your operational cost here, because early check-ins and late checkouts come at a cost. It's not something you can very easily give away. So yeah, and I know there are a lot of independent operators on the call as well, and I think it's very important not to misunderstand early check-in and late checkout, because the cost that it has, if you have an operation that runs on 95% occupancy during Tuesdays and Wednesdays, which are corporate days, you want to be very careful with that. And that's not to say that on a Sunday when, you know, you're maybe on 65%, it's a lot easier to do. So it's not against what Alex said, but it's more to to also balance the books here. Be very cautious and mindful of the costs that are connected to it. If that means that you need to have 2 additional housekeeping attendants to make up the lost time in cleaning and servicing rooms, or turn down service or whatever, then you need to be aware of that, and that's how you kind of need to calculate back, almost as a displacement calculation. On what the impact will be, because if you do that one night, fine. If you do it 30 nights a month, it's going to be a huge cost. And I think one other thing I would like to add here is that when you look at revenue increment, one of the most powerful things with upselling is when upselling an increment in revenue also drives impact, right? So, for example, you pair a suite with an upgrade or a dining credit that supports a B Corp. I have 2 B Corp hotels that supports your B Corp partner, because then all of a sudden the way revenue grows, that way the revenue grows, but it also does community trust. And I think this is what rounds up sensitive luxury, right? It's revenue and responsibility side by side. And I think that is a new form of how we can approach hospitality, is to combine things, work with partners, rather than the more straightforward going, early check-in or late checkout. Not saying that it's wrong, but I think there is more to it, and there's far more opportunity, which may take a bit of thinking, but to work with partners is very important. And I'll give you a very simple example. I work with train operators. Why? I have B Corp hotels. We are sustainable, right? For me, it's important that my guests can reach the hotel in a very fast and convenient way from, let's say, Heathrow to Paddington. Well, the fastest way to do that is with Heathrow Express. It's also the cleanest way. And if you compare it to an Uber, it's certainly the cheapest way to do it. So it cuts on all sides. And to work with partners, you're adding a value that they would normally not get with other hotels or other operators.
I think you've touched on an even bigger topic here, Jurriaan, and that's trust. That's building trust and establishing trust almost throughout that guest journey, which
correct
brings me quite nicely onto the role of guest feedback. I touched on reputation management at the top end of today's webinar, and I think it would be important to talk about it now, because guest feedback may give us an indication or show us, excuse me, some more opportunities to drive additional revenue, or perhaps, improve the service that will effectively drive more revenue and ultimately loyalty. So Kristina, I'll come to you first, if I may. How are you using guest feedback and those reviews to identify where those revenue opportunities lie?
Yeah, I think for us, feedback is extremely important. We probably talk about it twice, if not 3 times a day. We review the feedback that's coming in. We use that as an opportunity for us to make sure, that the guest doesn't leave unsatisfied and without a resolution. So for us, I think the motto in our property is we need to find a resolution before the guest leaves the hotel. And what messaging helps us to do, we are able to connect to the guests. So simple message before they leave, we hope you enjoyed your stay. Please, if there's anything that is not satisfactory, please do let us know. And I think a lot of times when the guests are checking out and they're leaving negative feedback as we are checking out, it's way too late for you as a property to actually turn that around and make sure that the guest is leaving satisfied. So for us, that feedback throughout the guest stay at the hotel is more important and more beneficial, because we can turn that around. We can turn around little experience that there are maybe some little issues into something that by the end of the stay, as they're leaving, they are happy. So I think that's where technology for us comes in, which enables for them to reach out to us and for us to reach out to them and say, hey, is there anything that we could have done different? Is there anything that we can still do? So I think that has improved our guest feedback exponentially. And as I said earlier on, we are not looking to actually work with Canary as a part of a revenue generating opportunities. We looked to work with them to be able to connect to the guests, right? To connect to the guests the way the guest wants to connect, via the phone, their own personal devices, where they don't have to pick up and try and get through to reception and come down necessarily. They've just arrived and I don't know, a towel is missing, or about to step into the shower, rather than having to come down and talk to somebody to use that technology. So I think that is huge for us. That's really helped us to improve our feedback scores. And then what we do with that is we use that to showcase maybe not necessarily the bedroom experience, but definitely meetings and events experience. To showcase that on a website, on a social media, to sort of like using PR company to use us to push that message out to the guests to say, hey, this is the events that we're hosting here. This is the guests that we're having, and to talk about that. I think, but I think what technology enabled us to be able to deal with it before the guest leaves, and I think that's probably the most important. That was something that we were not able to do before.
I think it was Alex who mentioned that the night before checkout is a missed opportunity for us to either re-engage or I suppose manage that night or optimize that night a bit better. Staying with you, Kristina, just for a moment, have you seen that a direct link, a direct impact on those? It could be encouraging feedback or perhaps a faster response to feedback on booking performance. I'm looking now at guest retention and that returning customer. Have you seen that link manifest?
I think that's very weaved into any sort of like travel partners algorithms now. The feedback is integral part of your availability and really the visibility online. It's built into any algorithms that if your feedback is positive and the guests are leaving positive feedback, you will naturally be appearing higher up. And then especially if you're comparing yourself with the competition, which is very similar product, perhaps if you're on par with location and the offerings and everything like that, feedback is something that can then set you apart in terms of your competition. And obviously that has the overall performance factor, right? So the in terms of visibility for the bookings. So absolutely, we do encourage the very active guest feedback as part of a brand as well, to be able to identify what those opportunities are for us, and we take it very seriously because we know that's linked directly to the performance, right? A satisfied guest will talk about us, and then they'll leave a good review, which then give us the higher visibility and absolutely.
If I could jump in there as well, I think that's something that I've witnessed Kristina and the team do really, really well. And it's a similar theory to the upsells. It's about filling the gap and ensuring that there's a clear line of communication. I often speak to hoteliers and, they talk, oh, I hate it when guests complain, but I say, no, you want the guests to be complaining to you because it's the ones that are vocal about it are the ones that give you an opportunity to fix it, right? And the ones that don't say anything at all are the scariest ones because they leave walking out the door and you don't know what's coming after that. Everyone has a different level of what they expect from a property. Everyone has a different understanding of what they want from their stay. And there's quite often maybe people that have been there for 4 days and they've just had a pillow that's slightly too hard. And if they get that, feedback notification the night before they leave, and you can turn that into an opportunity to say, oh, totally, sorry that the pillows were too hard. Let me send you a softer set now. And how about a complimentary late checkout to let you enjoy them a little bit longer? Anything along those lines can really elevate that guest experience. And it's not necessarily turning the 1 stars into 5 stars, it's turning the 4 stars into 5 stars. We see a huge pattern. Some statistics suggest that around 80% of people check reviews before staying at a property, and that also leads to direct bookings. So guest satisfaction has a direct correlation with revenue from overall occupancy and revenue from more direct bookings. So it's a really, really crucial thing that they're doing there at the Crowne Plaza.
Yeah,
And
I think, and just if I may jump on
course.
this as well, because it's not just reputation management. It's actually it's actually a map of opportunities. You know, if your guest feedback highlights that there are not enough healthy options, then it becomes a wellness upsell, right? Or when they want local experiences, then you may want to create more packages, right? So not necessarily is it just about the feedback. If it's being picked up correctly, it actually and it's being communicated correctly internally, it actually creates a lot of opportunities, because that is data that you would normally not capture unless, as Alex very rightfully said, unless somebody talks about it and tells you. You know, the thing about the pillow, maybe you should have a pillow menu.
I was going to add, like, let's not forget that with these, reviews and feedbacks, be it online, be it in person, but I'm going to say online to make my point. We've gone this almost this entire conversation without really touching on the impact and rise and influence of AI. And when your guests are searching for where to stay and they're looking at their local recommendations and they're looking at how they should arrive at your property, AI is going to be scraping all your public touch points and reviews included. And if those reviews include a resolution, include a response from the hotel, demonstrate how a problem has been fixed, surely that is going to improve visibility, trust, loyalty in the long run too. Jurriaan, I'm very aware of time, so I'm gonna fast track where I can, but there's a point to be made here about measuring success. We've talked about various initiatives and ways that we've optimizing our tech stack to drive that revenue, but how are you truly monitoring what success looks like and whether current systems are truly supporting that revenue growth?
Well, I mean, systems is always a bit of a thing, right? Because and it may not be to anybody's surprise, but unfortunately, hospitality has a lot of legacy systems. And legacy systems are not necessarily as communicative as, for example, AI is. What really bugs me is that most hoteliers, most operators actually only use 20% of the capacity of each of those systems, which is scary, right? So a lot of the systems are being bought in addition to systems that are already in place, but not necessarily are set up in the correct way. And then it's about data management, right? And I'm sure Alex and Kristina will join me in this. If you put nonsense into a system, the output is nonsense, right? So you need to manage, and there's a lot, and this is often forgotten. And hospitality industry, and I say that more often, and I don't want to upset anyone, but we're so far away from where other industries are when it comes to making technology work with each other. It's not only the tools and the systems that we implement or the technology that we implement. We also need to train and coach our teams and team members to utilize those systems to the best of its capacity, right? Before we start connecting more systems. Now, when it comes to return, you will instantly see return if you utilize data in a meaningful way. So I think during this conversation or during this this chat, we've put a lot of things together, right? That return will be visible quite quickly. But the majority is not in adding more technology. It's utilizing the technology that we have the right way, and then see what is missing. And when I started with Montcalm Collection, one of the first things was that we changed the whole tech stack. And we started not by looking at the front end, we started by looking at the back end. What do we have? What are we missing in order to optimize the front end? And then a whole rebranding comes and all kinds of other things come along with it. But to look at it from a flow perspective at the back end first, before you even start talking about the front end, that is critical. And I think a lot of and Kristina, as a director of revenue, will certainly agree to this. Before you introduce AI technology in revenue management, for example, you need to make sure that your revenue management system in itself is operating and fully functioning. Because the moment you add AI to it, it's a self-learning tool, but it means that in the first 6 to 8 months, you will need to override it daily, because that system doesn't understand your micro and macroeconomics for that particular property, let alone that you do that for 10, 15, 20, 30 properties, right? Because they all have their own little economy and their own neighborhood and their own partners and their own strategies, which not necessarily, if we have a conference in Excel, it may not affect Paddington, right? Or it may not affect Mayfair because it's a conference where delegates are paying £275 to attend a 3-day conference. I'm just using it as an example. They're not going to pay £1,000 for an overnight stay. That's very unlikely. So you need to make sure that as soon as you start to introduce AI in whatever shape or form, that it actually is a benefit to your system. Otherwise, you will not see a return. Then it starts to confuse things. It's the same with the guest journey. It's great to use a lot of AI technologies because it gives you data that you wouldn't normally have access to. But if your PMS system is old-fashioned, outdated, and not clean, then naturally your AI is going to give you things that are not relevant because it picks the wrong data.
We saw in the video, the Canary Tech video earlier at the top end of this webinar, that we can do more with less. And I want to build on Jurriaan's point just now and hand over the final word to Alex, because Jurriaan's been talking about existing tech stacks. You're looking at returns and ROI. Alex, what is the one area of existing tech stacks that you would recommend hoteliers should focus on first in order to optimize that ROI?
I think number one, it's not fair to make me just give one because I have a but I totally agree with what Jurriaan's saying. I think we're in a period of change right now where it's not just systems like ours, like at Canaries, that people are looking to for help and support. We're in a position where a lot of properties are now moving over to cloud-based systems, moving away from legacy systems, and I totally agree that having that point A of managing your property through a PMS is probably the best place to start. If you're working with something that's been in the property for 10 to 15 years, it's probably not optimized to its full potential now. Starting with the PMS, then the booking engine, website and payments, that, the real ROI, comes after that when you can add Canary into those points. But yes, just ensuring that you're fine tuning what you currently have. Canary can do a lot more with less at the moment. So we can understand the data. The great thing about Canary, and the AI having to learn is that we're already plugged into over 25,000 different hoteliers. So to a degree, we understand what's working, how to decipher data and a day-to-day from real reliable sources that are working right now. But absolutely, it all starts at the beginning. Then once that's all done, you can plug in your solutions like mobile check-in, AI guest messaging, upsells, and you can take it from there. So, replace or refresh what you have already and then move into the next phase.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alex. And I could see Kristina and Jurriaan nodding their heads as well. So
Yeah.
I think that's a
That's
great.
absolutely no. Alex is spot on with that. So and I agree. There is so much technology out there that is super useful. But if the basics are not right, then whatever you add on to it is going to be a nightmare. Both for, I mean, if you're using technology from Canary, right, which is amazing technology, but it needs to feed into a legacy system, it's going to be a nightmare for the operator, but it's also going to be a nightmare for Alex, because he will not be able to deliver the promise that he wants to deliver, which is an enhancement. And that enhancement certainly is there when your tech stack is in order.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I've really enjoyed today's conversation. We didn't quite get round to everything, but the good news is that we are going to leave this webinar open for a couple of minutes right at the end to allow our audience members to follow up on any of the links that we've popped into the chat today, including the LinkedIn profiles of our speakers. I'll just say a quick thank you to Jurriaan, to Kristina, to Alex for their time, insights and contributions today. I've just got some final closing slides that I'd like to run through before I say a final goodbye. Our next webinar in the series, we touched on empowering teams today and the importance of staff members in our operations. Our next webinar, a week today, is all about creating stronger hotel teams across the generations, building that multi-generational workforce. Would love to have you there. The link to register has been popped into the chat. And if you're interested in working with us alongside a similar webinar such as today, or perhaps one of our in-person events, do get in touch with my colleague Katie. Her details are up on your screens now. And all that's left for me to do is to say a huge thank you to Canary Technologies for their time and thinking cap in pulling together this webinar. Once again, thank you to our speakers. We will leave this webinar open. More details about Canary Technologies are also in the chat. So looking forward to seeing you in a week today. Otherwise, take care, folks, and I will see you all again soon. Bye now.
At IHM, we believe in the power of connection. We exist to inspire, to inform, and to unite decision makers who are shaping the future of hospitality and real estate. Our why is simple. We believe this industry thrives when people and ideas come together. And we're here to make that happen. So how do we do it? We challenge the status quo by creating platforms that go beyond the expected. We blend intelligent content, curated events, and a strong community into everything we do. Making it easy, accessible, and genuinely useful. From online engagement to face-to-face connection, we are known for being insightful, collaborative, and refreshingly human. We publish 4 leading multimedia brands, each a trusted voice in its sector, delivering breaking news, bold opinions, and fresh trends. We host world-class events, panel discussions, podcasts, award ceremonies, and webinars. Designed to spark ideas, drive conversation, and create impact. With over 62,000 monthly web visitors, 55,000 email subscribers, and 69,000 social media connections. Our reach is deep and our community is active. We're partnered with the biggest names in hospitality, and we'd love to connect with you. So whether you're looking to grow your visibility, meet the right people, or understand where the market's heading, read, watch, listen, and meet. Do it all with IHM.